Welcome to the Fighting on Film podcast, the podcast all about classic and obscure war movies, from the Normandy landings to the days of chivalry and swords. If it's been captured on film, we're going to try and cover it. I'm Robbie of RM Military History.
I'm Matthew Moss of Historical Firearms and the Armourer's Bench.
Hello, welcome back to Fighting on Film. Now, this week's film was chosen by our supporting cast over on Patreon, where you can support us if you wish and help keep the mics on here at FOF HQ. And we're thankful for every single one of our supporting cast members who does vote in the Patreon pick, because it's always an interesting vote. So, Matt, what did the patrons pick for us this week?
Well, Rob, it wasn't anything with swords and chivalry. It was, of course, 1956's Attack.
Yes, it was. Yeah, there was. What was there to choose from? You selected, oh Christ, was it Secret School for Spies or something like that?
School for Secrets?
Yep, School for Secrets.
Yeah, film about boffins in doing a raid to capture some German radar.
A War, which was a Swedish or Norwegian film? I can't remember. Danish film. I was in the right region. And I chose Ironclad, which was a chivalry and swords film. But Attack, Robert Aldrich's Attack from 1956 did win. So, Matt, how about you go into production first, then we'll go through the cast.
Absolutely. So, as we mentioned, it's a Robert Aldrich film. His previous war movie credits, of course, the biggest one out there is Dirty Dozen in 1967. But prior to that, he'd been an assistant director on Bombardier in 1943. G.I. Joe in 1945. He'd done 10 Seconds to Hell in 1959, Angry Hills in the same year. And, of course, his last war film was Too Late the Hero, which is one a lot of people have been asking us to cover for a while now, but we will get to it.
I'm not a fan.
Rob's not a fan of that one.
Not
it's
really.
It's a wasted cast, in my opinion. That's what it is. But we'll get to that. Produced by Aldrich, he was a bit of an independent filmmaker for the period. It was distributed by United Artists. And interestingly, the screenplay was written by James Poe, who later went on to do The Bedford Incident in 1965, which is phenomenal. And his only other credit that fits within the war movie genre is Enola Gay, The Men, the Mission, and the Atomic Bomb in 1980. But Poe adapted this screenplay from it's always described as a failed Broadway play.
It is.
1954's Fragile Fox by Norman Brooke, and that starred Dane Clark as Costa. He was in Action in the North Atlantic with Bogey.
Oh wow!
And also Destination Tokyo as well. So he had a film career, but in 1954 he was doing a Broadway run, and the adaptation is it's interesting. It's a number of it's a 2-act play, and there's four separate scenes where they're all little character-based discussion.
Yeah, you can tell what scenes are riffed off the
it's Jenny's Endish in that they're always in somewhere chatting to one another, and it's very character-based, and we get that carried through into the film, which we'll talk about later on.
I felt like they used the scenes from the play when they're in the house, when they're in the basement, and when they're in the sort of CO, the command point. Sorry, what do you call it? Oh God,
command post.
Yes, they're in there, and then all the more classic war movie scenes are like these bridging moments to get you to those scenes. That's how how I saw it anyway.
Yeah, I looked at a playbill for the original play. It has those 4 specific scenes that anchor the film, also anchored the play. Cinematography was by Joseph Biroc, who had done Bombardier in 1943. In 1946, Rob, he did It's a Wonderful Life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Sorry.
Any excuse to do the Jimmy Stewart
impression. That film. I love that.
It's a great movie. It's what everyone wants in a socialist Christmas movie. Too Late the Hero in 1970. He won an Oscar for Towering Inferno.
Yeah.
He also did the cinematography for Blazing Saddles and Airplane, two of my favorite comedies.
What a varied career
of that period. Yeah, I know, right? But it's actually really quite nicely shot, this film, and there's a lot of Dutch angles and nice close-up work. Establishing shots are interesting. It's tightly done and it works really nicely.
Yes, it is.
Apparently, it was shot in about 32 days. But before they did the shooting, they did something which wasn't always done. They did table reads. And Aldrich did this because he wanted changes to the script suggested before they got on set, because he hated surprises and changes while he was filming. So they did table reads for a couple of weeks, and then they shot the film in 32 days on the backlots of Universal Studios and Archeo Pathé in rural California, which doesn't. I mean, it's not Spain, is it? I mean, we're in another Battle of the Bulge movie, where there's no snow, not a lot of cloud, and it doesn't look like.
It's not as egregious though as Battle of the Bulge, because Battle of the Bulge is trying to be this big, massive blockbuster with everyone in it, whereas this is a character study with a World War II slap of paint on it. So I don't. It doesn't irk me as much. The fact you've mentioned there's no snow, I didn't once think in the whole movie, where's the snow? But now you mention it, I'm like, oh god, yeah, there's no snow.
I mean, yeah, it's we've already covered the best Battle of the Bulge War movie.
Battleground, yeah.
So it's forgivable. It's as you said, it's a character piece, and that's what the film basically is. But it was shot for about $850,000, so it's not a negligible budget.
Modest.
And then I think the most interesting aspect of the production is we have that classic. The Department of Defense, US Army, does not want to be involved with a picture that doesn't paint the US Army and the US military in the most positive lights.
Yep.
They outright refused to allow the use of material, men, advisors, and they even prevented Aldrich from looking at US Army Signal Corps footage.
It's so harsh.
So just circling back to what the Army had to say, apparently it was described as a very distasteful story and derogatory to Army leadership during the combat, including weak leadership, cowardice, and finally the murder of a company commander. And there was a lot of back and forth. Aldrich tried to explain to the Department of Defense what he was trying to do, and that it was more. It wasn't a stab at the Army in general. It was a character study, and that kind of thing. But Aldrich protested to Donald E. Barrich, the chief of the Motion Picture Section Pictorial Branch of the Department of Defense, in February 1956, stating that theatrically and film-wise, moral values are measured in comparatives. Strength is measured against weakness, heroics against cowardice. We feel strongly that our film is one that shows beyond question qualities of moral righteousness, leadership, courage, heroism, and above all, personal integrity on the part of both enlisted men and officers of the Army.
Yeah, that's a good argument. Like, I can't see why. I mean, I can see why at the time, because obviously you had, the Cold War was just starting to blossom as it would go on. So you don't want to have a film that shows your military being filled with cowards. We don't want to besmirch the reputation of the men.
You've got that backdrop of all those big budget, very pro Department of Defense, US military, like Strategic Air Command, Fighter Command, not Fighter Command, Fighter Pilot, and all those,
Jet Pilot with John Wayne. Yeah,
exactly. That put the emphasis on very heroic figures working day in, day out in US military branches, and it's a very positive light. And this is completely different. Aldrich talks about, in the same letter, he talks about how he wants to compare the good with the bad, and you can't show a good character without having it contrast against bad ones.
Yeah, it's just classic filmmaking as well, and how you do character pieces. So I can get why the military industrial machine wasn't keen, but I also can sort of not understand why they wouldn't. You can supply weapons and tanks to a movie without caring about its plot and its themes. You know, you can. It's an odd one, isn't it? I don't quite get.
It was the same with Men in War. They wouldn't provide it either, and that is a much more pragmatic look at the US military.
Yeah, true.
Than this, I would say.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think maybe people just hadn't read the script properly, or maybe they weren't.
Maybe that's the case. I suppose the similarity between this film and Men at War is they both have complex characters, and it isn't black and white.
No.
So it's kind of they're putting characters against one another, and they're at loggerheads to such a degree that it becomes, untenable. Whereas in other films of the period, they'll have a little bit of friction, but it'll be overcome.
I don't think this movie really ended. Before we move on, I don't think this movie is hurt by the lack of involvement by the American powers that be. I don't really see an issue with it, and that'll become apparent in the alley tally, really, I think. So, should we move on to cast?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the cast this week, and I've made a little subtitle for the cast section this week. I've called it the Academy Awards / Combat Club, and that will become apparent as we move along. So leading the picture, the star man is Jack Palance playing Lieutenant Joe Costa. Now he's a US actor, born to Ukrainian parents. He served in the United States Army Air Force in the Second World War. He was supposedly have had to have facial reconstructive surgery after bailing from a B-24 Liberator on a training exercise. And that this was said to have given him those distinct features like the chiseled cheekbones, the deep-set eyes that we know Jack Palance for. But when he died, he was quoted to have said this about the rumours. Studio press agents make up anything they want to, and reporters go along with it. One hack created the legend that I had been blown up in an air crash during the war, and my face had to be put back together by way of plastic surgery. If it is a bionic face, why did they not do a better job of it? And obviously Palance, he plays tough guys and villains, and he was having an accolade-filled time in the 50s. After having been an actor on Broadway, his debut role in Panic in the Streets in 1951, he starred in Holes of Montezuma in 51, directed by Lewis Milestone, no less. In his third feature role, he was nominated for an Academy Award of Best Supporting Actor alongside Joan Crawford in Southern Fear. Then the following year, he gained another nomination in the same category in the Alan Ladd-led Western Shane. And then he'd have to wait 40 years for an Oscar win, which he'd finally get for playing Curly Washburn in 1991 City Slickers. I know, right? Crazy. In his other war movie roles, apart from Attack, is in 1960s Austerlitz, about Napoleon's victory at Austerlitz in 1805. He was Razzer in 1990. In 1966 is The Professionals. That's a war western hybrid. I do think that is relevant. A couple of spaghetti war. God. Yeah, it's a great film. Lee Marvin's in that one as well, so there's a little connection.
And Burt Lancaster.
And Burt Lancaster, yeah. A couple of spaghetti war films in the late 60s. He was in A Bullet for Rommel, which I own an original Belgian poster for because I like the artwork. Legion and Legion of the Damned in 1969. And he also, I didn't know this, but he played Fidel Castro in 1969 Shay. Quite a career.
Indeed. Okay,
I can see it.
Okay.
He's
How he didn't get another nomination for this, I don't know.
No, it's mad, right? It's absolutely crazy. So from here on out, I think this is where my Academy Award Combat Club will come apparent. So we have Eddie Albert, second billing. He plays the cowardly Captain Erskine Cooney, and he was a 2-time Academy Award nominee for Roman Holiday in 1954, and then in 1973 for The Heartbreak Kid. And his first big break came in a radio series called The Honeymooners, and then after this he was offered a film contract with MGM. But he secretly worked, before the war broke out, he secretly worked for US intelligence, taking photos of U-boats in Mexico. And in 1942, he enlisted into the US Coast Guard. And in 1943, he transferred to the US Naval Reserve as a lieutenant. And then he received a Bronze Star with Combat V for his actions during the Battle of Tarawa in November 1943, acting as a coxswain of a landing craft, he rescued 47 Marines who had become stranded on shore, off the shore, and he helped save 30 more while under Japanese machine gun fire. I mean, absolutely incredible.
Wow.
And by the time that Attack came around, he was aged 50. I mean, you wouldn't guess it from his on-screen
actually looks quite good, doesn't he, for his age?
Past for late 30s. He starred in a couple of war films during the earlier part of his career, appearing in 1942's Eagle Squadron and 1943's Bombardier that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And his post-war film roles included Orders to Kill in 1958. You're in the Navy now. He was Colonel Thompson in The Longest Day. And he also appeared in the TV series Combat in Series 2, Episode 7, called Doughboy, where he plays an American soldier who is still fighting the First World War.
Wow, okay, that sounds interesting.
I know, that's amazing. And then we have Lee Marvin. He needs no introduction. He plays Lieutenant Colonel Clyde Bartlett. We obviously know Lee Marvin on the show from Dirty Dozen and its sequel. And, he was an Aldrich staple. However, the role is an interesting one because he plays an officer who's a manipulator, and it's over the rough and tumble image of Reisman in Dirty Dozen. Filmed in the year that he would be cast as the lead in the TV series M Squad, which was a hard-hitting cop drama, and that propelled him into being a huge star in the 1960s. Other war films include The Big Red One, Shout at the Devil, Hell in the Pacific, Sergeant Riker, and the Delta Force. I think we've mentioned this before in our Dirty Dozen roundup. And like Eddie Albert, Marvin also starred in an episode of Combat in Series 2, Episode 1, called The Bride Chalon as Sergeant Turk. And I did start watching it earlier today, and I just think it's weird that you have Vic Morrow, and obviously these are established stars by season 2, and they already were going in, but I think it's weird that you have a guest who's arguably much bigger and in notoriety than any of the cast. It's mad.
I love it when that happens.
I love it. It's great. And he's just playing like a pure Marvin character, a proper hard ass. It's very funny. It's a good episode. And then we have William Smithers playing Lieutenant Harry Woodruff, and Smithers is perhaps best known for his role as Jeremy Wendell in Dallas. But he also appeared as Warden Barot in 1973's Papillon, and a boatload of US TV credits, including Combat again in Series 3, Episode 27, called Cry the Ruins as Lieutenant Marks. Then we have Robert Strauss of PFC Bernstein. He's a New York-born actor, started his career in classics, working on Broadway and Shakespeare productions. His best-known period of being a movie star was probably in the 50s. He gained an Academy Award nomination in 1953 for his supporting role in Stalag 17 alongside William Holden and Don Taylor. His other war movie work included roles in the war musical hybrid Jumping Jacks in 1942. That was a bit of a weird, parachute one. Yeah. Act of Love in 53. The Bridge of Toko-Ri in 1954, Wake Me When It's Over in 1960, and then The Last Time I Saw Archie in 1961. All of his sort of war movies, apart from this and Toko-Ri, he's in like these lighter sort of war movies.
There's a definite subgenre there, and we've kind of neglected those.
We have, but we should get onto them.
Yeah, there's a few. There's that one with Cary Grant where the submarine's pink.
Yeah,
Operation Petticoat, is
Operation Petticoat. Yeah,
with,
that one.
Yeah, I like that one. That one's good.
We'll get there. There's plenty of time.
There's a lot of time.
Have no fear. There's war movies for years.
Exactly.
We have Buddy Ebsen as Task Sergeant Tolliver, and he's probably best known again for playing Jed Clampett in the Beverly Hillbillies in the 60s and early 70s. And I thought this was interesting. He was originally cast as a scarecrow in Wizard of Oz, but then he switched to the Tin Man. But then his role was recast to Jack Haley because Ebsen became ill during filming because of the aluminium dust they use as part of the makeup. And MGM covered it up for a few years.
Aluminium poisoning on the set of...
I know.
Was...
And he had breathing issues for the rest of his career and life. But he served in the US Coast Guard in the Second World War. What
episode of Combat was he in?
He wasn't, actually. This is one of the few ones that wasn't. Other war work includes a role in the 1941 pre-Pearl Harbor war film called Parachute Battalion and Between Heaven and Hell in 1956. Yeah. And then we have John Shepherd as Colonel Jackson. He's the guy that jumps the queue for coffee. He played Paul Martin in the 1950 Lassie series, as well as TV roles in Hitchcock's Half Hour. In the Hitchcock Half Hour, not Hitchcock's Half Hour, the the British comedy series.
Very different.
The Alfred Hitchcock.
Hancock's Half Hour, yeah.
I've written Alfred Hitchcock's Half Hour here in my notes and not realised. Staying in. And in the early 60s. And then in the 50s, he appeared in, and I didn't even know this existed, and I thought it would be funny to mention it. Warner Brothers produced a Casablanca TV show.
What?
They spun it off. I don't know. I don't know how that came about or what it was like.
Who played Rick?
Not delved deep. I can't remember. I have to look it up.
That's mad. Okay.
Yeah. And then I'm going for it. There's not much. There isn't a great big cast, so I thought it'd be interesting to just go for.
Yeah, might as well do all. They're all interesting actors.
Yeah. And then Jim Goodwin as PFC Ricks. I think he's the youngest member of the cast. He played Farrell in 1966's Star Trek series, and played the role of a dispatch rider in 2 episodes of Combat in series 1 and 3. And then he appears in Perry Mason and a couple of episodes to The Voyage of the Bottom of the Sea in the 1960s. A lot of TV credits. Then we move on to Peter Van Eck as the SS captain. He was a German-born actor who moved to New York in the early 30s. He was an ardent anti-fascist.
Recognisable face.
His best-known roles are in war films playing German officers. His roles include appearances in 5 Grades to Cairo, The Desert Fox, Jump into Hell, The Longest Day as Colonel Ocker, The Spy Coming from the Cold, and his final role was actually as General von Brock in Bridget Remagen in 1969.
Yeah,
which we reviewed a few weeks ago with Peter Caddick-Adams. And then the final actor in my Academy Awards and Combat Club is Stephen Garay, who plays Otto, the German NCO who's taken prisoner. He was a Hungarian actor who emigrated to the States. He appeared in a 1943 American training film called Resisting Enemy Interrogation, which also starred Van Eck as an uncredited role as an officer. And then he went on to become well known for his work in noir films in the 40s and 50s, such as Mask of Demetrius and House on Telegraph Hill.
Yeah. Cool.
And there you go. That's the potted history of the main cast of Attack. And as we said before, we're going to keep coming back to it. I mean, the cast is incredible in this. Everyone's bringing their A game. Palance comes out from being this supporting man. With a few leads, but not any great shakes. And then he's in this, and it's like, wow, here's Palance, proper going for it. Eddie Albert's going against type. He's usually playing the sort of happy-go-lucky type, and he's not playing that in this. Marvin usually plays the tough guy, and he's not playing that in this. It's very interesting casting from Aldrich. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it is. Did you mention Richard Jekyll as well?
Oh no, God! I just completely, skipped over Jekyll. Sorry,
another Aldrich. Aldrich staple.
I've got my little thing here for him. I'll just quickly tack it on. So obviously Matt said Richard Jekyll there. He played Private Snowden. I was laughing too much at the Hitchcock's Half Hour. So Jekyll's best known to fans of this show for his role as MP Sergeant Bowron in Dirty Dozen, but he also starred in Guadalcanal Diary in 1943, Winging a Prayer, Battlegrounds in 1949, Sands of Iwo Jima in 1949, Devil's Brigade, and in Combat episode.
Yes.
In a series 2 episode called Gideon's Army as Sergeant Buxton, and he's a double one because he also received an Academy Award for Best Supporting Role for his work in the 1971 film A Great Nation. So there we are.
Wow, and he was also in Dirty Dozen too.
Yes, he was. Yeah,
of course. And Delta Force too, but
Lee
Marvin wasn't in that one.
Well, because Lee Marvin had passed away. That's why.
Sadly, yes.
I know, right. So moving on to the retro review, and this week it comes from Variety from December 31st, 1955, and I'll just read you the opening paragraph. Attack presents a cowardly officer who is murdered by his men. Entire film, from the play Fragile Frocks by Norman Brooks, is treated with a hard realism that pays off in gutsy entertainment. It's a grim, extremely tough account of an infantry company during the Battle of the Bulge in World War II, brightly projected by the fine characterizations contributed by the cast.
Not a bad little review, punchy. I also have a review this week in a strange turn of events.
Coup, that is, everyone.
We've got one from the New York Times, September 1956, from Bosley Crowther. It says, "The attack on the town is breathtaking. The brief holding of the position is intense, and the return of the lieutenant to take his vengeance on the cowardly captain is sheer agony. Indeed, the completion of the drama is so charged with personal anger, and the hate for the whole situation collapses in a flood of hysteria. Jack Palance, who is lean and impressive as the lieutenant in the midst of the attack, becomes a tattered, tormented monster when he returns to destroy the man he hates. And Eddie Albert, as the captain, becomes a wild-eyed, gibbering maniac. Mr. Albert is uncomfortably credible, but he and the rest of the company go haywire at the end. Even so, this is a stark, disquieting picture."
Yeah.
That's one of the best written reviews that I've come across in a while.
I think we've had on the pod, to be fair.
It's a cracker, that one.
They're very short.
So I had to include that one.
Very short and sweet 50s copy when we do these. It's just like, got to get this out to the editor in between cigarettes and wine.
Yeah.
It just kind of feels. But then you get something like that. It's quite competently written. It was very good. So moving on to the one-word reviews. They're back this week. I think they've had a couple of weeks off. So we go with the London IC says friction. Paul O'Brien goes with dark. Martin Collins says pressure. Rubber goes with daddy, ! Ian Gorey says gritty. Philip Blood goes with political. Brian Williams goes with controversial. David Rees-Jones goes with crushing, with a little emoji of an arm, which I thought was quite funny. And David Currant just goes with Palance.
Yeah, that scene with the arm and the tank.
Yeah. I just thought of Shaun of the Dead. I mean, he's got an arm off.
But it does lead to one of the best lines of the film. "I never knew a man could bleed so much."
Yeah, it's great. We'll get onto that later because it's just such a great sequence. Alley Tally?
Let's go.
Alley Tally.
It's time for Alley Tally on Fighting on Film.
I mean, it's the usual fare. We've got that classic, we need uniforms, get them from the studio, costume cupboard where it's original Stahlhelms.
They're not as bad as that. Yeah, okay, then they
black are. SS uniforms. But at least we've got some K98Ks rather than Gewehr 98s, which are often featured. Very prominent Maxim MG08.
I think that's gas powered.
Yeah, I think all the machine guns in this are definitely.
Yeah, because the belt is someone's manipulating that belt when they have a little shot.
I'm not sure anyone fires a live round in this film, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because in the sequence at the end,
down to like individual weapons.
Yeah, well, at the end where they all put a round into Spoilers Cooney's body.
Yeah.
None of those weapons cycle, so none of them are firing blanks. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
There might be a couple.
No, interesting.
The Thompson, there might be some live fire with the Thompson, I think, as he's running in to the town. But there's not a lot of set piece gunfight action. Really, it's not that kind of film.
No, it's not.
The Thompson's a 1928 A1. There's Garands and carbines, which sometimes you don't get the mix. Actually,
no,
sometimes it's all M1 carbines or all M1 Garands.
I like how Costa starts with an M1 carbine, and then by the time we've got to where they are, he's got a Thompson. I like that. It's like a little progression, even if it's not meant. I like that.
There's the Germans are running an M2 60mm American mortar.
Yep.
In a couple of scenes. It's a very, especially the opening is a very empty battle sequence, a very empty battlefield, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And you can tell that they haven't got the budget or the access to equipment that you could fill that space up with. It's ambitious still.
They say it's Aachen, and in my head I'm just going, the very fucking outskirts of Aachen.
Yeah, it's about 3 miles outside. The little set piece in Rommel, or what's supposed to be Rommel, isn't bad.
Quite good. Yeah.
It's quite a good little set on the back lot there.
When we do Saving Private Ryan, we have to compare Rommel. Rommel or Bumville or Fumville or some such place. Sorry.
What else do we got? Have we got and the bazooka, of course. But do you want to go over the vehicles?
Yeah, we'll come back to the bazooka.
Yeah, because it's kind of.
Well, I'll go for the uniforms as well. So we've got the
absolutely
the M1943 jacket. It's quite prevalent throughout with the Americans wearing that. By this time in the war, they had mainly switched over to M1943 uniforms, but you always get a mix with the US Army in the Second World War. So you've got men wearing like 36 pattern trousers. I think M43 boots in there as well. I think I saw one tank jacket off in the middle distance, and there's a nice little mixture there. And then we've got the winter clothing because it's meant to be the winter. So you've got thick scarves, Jeep hats, gloves. I like that little personal touch. Something for me. Winter troops in the Second World War just look really cool. There's something about them. If you look up the British Army fighting in Operation Varsity, everyone's got their gloves and jerkins. There's something about that.
Yeah.
Winterized soldier I quite like. And moving on to the vehicles, we've got German Panzer mock-ups one's based on a Marmon Harrington CTL3 and another's on an M5 light tank. And apparently one was bought and rented. And there's also American half-tracks and Willis Jeeps and a couple of Deuce and a halves. And obviously the lack of tanks accurate tanks is down to that, not having that involvement by the US government military industrial machine there. And I think it sort of hurts the picture because it would have been nice to have a Panzer, or it would have been nice to have a Sherman with a
something a bit bigger than a.
Yeah, it would have been okay, but it just when they're far away, they don't look too bad. But when Palance is attacking them at the end, like he could just lean up and drop that bomb.
Yeah, he doesn't actually have to climb on the tank. Does he?
They look a little bit laughable, but they do the job. I can understand with the.
I think it's the fact that they put that big, what is supposed to be an 88mm gun.
Yeah, on it
with the transit support up for most of it as well.
They're doing that. It's meant to be a King Tiger, aren't they?
Oh God! And it's the smallest American Army tank possible.
Yeah, like it could have even been a half track. They didn't have any artillery pieces like that. It could be any AFV.
It could have been anything. You are right there. And it does look a little bit janky, but it's forgivable.
I'll forgive him, isn't it?
It's the wrong bloody tank, as Al would say.
Always. We have to edit in the Leopard for him.
Yeah. Even if they'd had US Army support, it probably would have been like a Sherman if they were lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a Chaffee.
A Chaffee, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is what it is.
It's fine.
Similarly,
he takes bazooka.
he takes on the Panzers with a bazooka, and it's an M9 bazooka, which is a post-war, slightly larger diameter.
It's stubbier, isn't it? It looks.
Yeah, it's a little bit shorter, a little bit fatter, and they've mocked it up a little
bazooka
bit.
Form.
It's a short king. What they've done is they've added this odd carved like front grip to it.
Yeah.
Because the M1 and M1A had like a two pistol grips.
Like a front grip,
and that's obviously what they've tried to replicate because the M9 wasn't in service in 1944. And it looks a little bit weird with that carved wooden front grip to make it look like an earlier version of it. But nice to include a bazooka. And it gets a couple of rounds off.
He loads it himself as well. It's quite cool.
He does. You don't see him attaching the ignition wires.
He doesn't quite have time to do that, but
anything like that. That would have added to the tension if he'd started trying to wrap an ignition wire around some contacts.
Bless him.
But yeah, that about rounds it out for the. Did I mention the MG08, the German MG08 that they have?
There's a really cool Peter Van Eck has a really cool hip-fire Luger scene where he takes out one of the American
That's the
lads
most
running.
nonchalant. Like, the radio guy's running into the house, isn't he? And he
It's like Western style.
Just leaning on the door frame, having a smoke.
It's like a ciggy, like take him out. It was a thing. This is a fucking mad reference. People would be like, "Oh God, he's off on his mind palace again." But if you ever visited the National Army Museum before they had their restoration in, like, God, how many years ago now, they used to have these little vignette things they'd filmed for the Crimean War sequence, and there was a bit where it's meant to be they're fighting on a defensive line in the Battle of it's like not Salamanca. Oh crikey, one of the Sevastopol, yeah, up there. And the actors, I forget the guy's name. I've met him a couple of times, but there was a little vignette, and it was like of a guy fighting in that little defensive trench system there, and he's talking about what he did, and at the end he goes, "Oh, don't let that chap get too close," and he like sort of just nonchalantly fires his revolver. And it always, whenever I see someone do that now, it just reminds me of that. But that's
that chap's one.
Yes, yeah. It's like that. But that's that mad reference there. I can't even find those videos anymore. But anyone at the NARM listening, I'd love to see them again. But that's my man.
That sounds like a FOF special right there. And then we can't move on from the Ali Tally without discussing the most Ali piece of kit throughout the whole film, and that is Coney's secret jerry can stash of booze and ciggies.
It's so cool, isn't it?
And Lee Marvin's coming over to play poker.
Yeah.
Colonel Clyde. And he goes under the bed, pulls out a jerry can. You're thinking, what's he doing with this jerry can? Puts it on the bed. He's talking to the adjutant while he's doing this. Mm-hmm. Flips open the jerry can, and inside is a couple of bottles of whiskey and some cartons of cigarettes, and that's his little stash. I thought that was
nice, isn't it?
A really ace little inclusion.
It's so cool. I really like it, and the whiskey becomes quite a plot device towards the end. But
it does, yeah.
Yeah, I do like. I like
Chekhov's bourbon.
Chekhov's bourbon, yeah. I like the staging of the scenes as well. Everything is very planned and methodical. And I think the lack of budget helps these movies sometimes, because you think more about what you don't have rather than thinking you can buy everything and have it in one shot. But yeah, maybe we should move into favourite scenes.
Hello there, sorry to interrupt. I wanted to let you know that you can now join our supporting cast over on Patreon. As thanks for your support, you'll be able to help us pick films, submit questions for guests, have first pick on brand new and exclusive merch, and much more. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
So my favourite scene, and it stands out for me in the performance and the way it ends. So it's Cooney's breakdown. So after the confrontation with Bartlett, as the Germans are attacking, Bartlett comes in and tells Cooney that you are going to hold this. I don't want any more foul-ups from you. You're a thorn in my side. He finally sees the man for who he is. He wanted to use him for his political gains, but now he realises this man is just a sap in his eyes. So Bartlett strikes him and he tells him, "Oh, I hate you." And it's probably some of the most violent 50s acting that you could probably get in a movie with Marvin without saying a swear, I think, because it rides the line. And then after Bartlett leaves, Harry takes the whiskey away from Cooney, who's drinking, to sort of get some Dutch courage, I guess. And he says, "Don't you know all the answers? I don't know all the answers, but you're not going to find them in there." And then he asks Cooney if he really thinks he's going to find courage in a bottle. And he lambasts him as being a criminal, responsible for the deaths of men under his command. And they tussle over the bottle. Harry smashes it. And Cooney finally breaks. And he says he's scared. And he goes into the bunker and sees his slippers. And I'll read. I found the script. I've got the quotes. And I'll read you the breakdown, because I think it's an amazing piece of writing. I won't act it, but I'll read it. He says, "I'm scared. I'm scared of you. I'm scared of Bartlett. I'm scared. I'm scared of my father. My dad whooped me. He whooped me. I'm going to whoop some guts into you, boy. I'll make a man of you. I'm talking to you, boy. I'll make you a man. And I thought that someday I'd wake up one morning and then I was 30 years old." And it's the regression of Cooney in that scene. You finally realise that he's only doing this to prove something to his father, who hit him, and that the trauma of conflict brings up childhood trauma. And it was just something that I wasn't I just wasn't expecting it from a 50s movie, if I'm pretty honest with you. I didn't think that it would go into that realm. And then after Harry's cowardice has finally overtaken him and he's inconsolable on his bed, and then you get Costa returning from the battlefield, and it's like a horror movie shot. I got written down here, it's as if the monster has finally broken in, and you get this crazed look on Palance's face, and he demands to know where Cooney is. And Harry protects Cooney, because I think in that scene, he knows that in that state, Costa will murder Cooney, and it won't be pretty. And he's almost like the mediator in this. And I know I've put in my notes that Harry, for me, is the only sane character in the movie out of the commanders. So you've got, Bartlett's trying to do it for manipulation purposes and his own gain.
Yeah.
Cooney's trying to save his skin and prove himself to his father. Costa's just broken, but Harry's the one that is the actual leader. But he's just doing it in a reserved manner, and he's the mediator throughout the whole movie.
I would agree, definitely.
And that scene is just incredible for Albert's. Albert's that scene should have nominated him for a third nomination at the Oscars. And I've got a quote from Eddie Albert talking about the nuances of playing Cooney. So he said, "I'd been in combat as a naval officer. I was commended for bravery in battle. 2 or 3 days later, I wondered, was I brave or was I a coward just trying to get out of the action? Is there such thing as a coward? During action, the coward rationalizes his actions. James Poe showed in the script that the coward does not exist in the moment. It's only outsiders who say this later who put this view on it. Aldrich approved of my approach. He had sympathy for Cooney. He made Cooney understandable. He wasn't just a cheap villain. That was the moral base. Bob brought it out with a sense of compassion, of pity. But he's got to be killed. He's a danger. He rationalized himself out of responsibility."
It's great writing. It's a great performance.
It really, really is.
And the direction is there as well. I like the controlled nature of Albert's breakdown in character, where he just the snap change of where he regresses into his childhood.
Yeah.
And delivers that monologue from his father, and then that contrasts really nicely with the magnetism and the sheer hatred that Palance has when he comes to that door.
Yeah.
It's really good.
It is. But then, like later on, even when you get, you still see that Cooney's got this real mean streak in him, where he's takes the Thompson.
My favorite scene is the cellar scene. Where Palance is great in that sequence. As the dying man who is begging God for the strength to kill.
Yeah. It's such an amazing
it's a great scene. But then again, I think Albert almost steals it, where he sees Palance Costa on the floor trying to reach for the pistol, and he moves it away, kicks it away, and he laughs.
Simple,
he's laughing.
Isn't it? It makes you angry, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's the whole
rage.
thing about the beauty and the brilliance of how that character's written, and also how Albert plays it. Is you fucking hate him. Yeah, he's really detestful. Like, you really, really do hate him. Yeah, and you can completely be on the same level as Palance and the other characters. Like, you can completely understand the hatred they all have for him.
Because you felt for him up until then. You felt for him. You could say he's a coward at the start, where you clearly get shown his anxiety with the hands fumbling at the radio, but the switch is just so creamy, perfect, chef's kiss.
Another scene that stands out there is the bit where he's talking to Lee Marvin during the poker game, and that's a great scene on its own. But you can really see the childlike mentality that he harbors, where he's desperate for to explain why he wants that citation and how he's going to surprise his father with it when he gets home. And it's also childlike and naive. And that's the bit where you go, I can kind of feel for him because he's obviously been tormented and abused.
But then that mean streak comes out, and you're like,
yeah.
So you are.
As soon as he starts laughing and kicking away that pistol in the cellar, there's
no redemption from that.
No, there's no redemption from that. And the scene where he's finally shot and they all put a round into him, which removes the blame from Harry. Although it's kind of implied at the end, isn't it, that he does tell command about what's been going on anyway.
Heavily implied.
Because he's the conscious consciousness.
He's the sane one.
He's the conscience of the film.
I think it's the whole thing of he knows that he couldn't accuse Cooney of being a criminal and then not dob himself in for committing a crime. He knows
he doesn't want to play the same politics
as
that Marvin's character is playing.
Yeah. And that's a great end to the film as well, where you've got, Marvin trying to sweet talk, cool talk his way out of it, knowing now that his ticket to politics is dead and he can spin that however he wants because the guy's dead. It's just such an interesting, I'll get you a promotion. I'll make the worry cushy for you, Mr. Harry and all that. It's swarthy. He just plays a swarthy bugger so well.
He plays it marvelously. It's a great cast, and there's some really good performances from those three.
Yeah, there are.
I got a little quote from Aldrich about the film. He says it was quite a personal film for him, I think. He says, my main anti-war argument was not the usual war is hell, but the terribly corrupting influence that war can have on the most normal, average human beings and what terrible things it makes them capable of.
Yeah. No, I think this movie does it very well. Because the men are acting to the situation around them rather than being spurred on by the action, like many of these movies that we've seen. This one really felt like the men, they weren't above what was going on, but they weren't as bothered. Costa was the one fighting the war.
Yeah.
The others weren't. They were just doing it for themselves and because of the war. Like, it's a very complex, nuanced movie in one thing, and then on the other hand, it's just this 50s bog standard war movie when it goes to the action. It's a very interesting, complex sort of movie.
We said it earlier. I mean, it's a middling war movie, but it's a great character piece. I think that's what I said that before we started recording. It's not the greatest war movie. It's not a terrible war movie. It's a very strong war movie, but it's a brilliant character film.
Yeah. It's like, how Dirty Dozen is more of an ensemble adventure than an actual war film. I know that might upset some people.
It's that war genre being
it's a Guns of
facility
Navarone.
To make these pictures about the human condition, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I think that's where this one shines. So should we move into final thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're already there.
I think we are. But it just, for me, as we've said all the way through, it's a triumphant character study, amazing performances, and it reminded me of 12 O'Clock High and The Cruel Sea, where we really get to know these people through the dialogue, and the war is just happening and these men are affected by it, almost like Appointment in London era type stuff, where it's more about the people than any battle or any sort of action. And I think that's down to James Poe taking this play and adapting it, and you still get the moments of Palance being a war hero, having his action moment for the people in the cinema, but it isn't really about that. That's just Costa's character. That's who he is. That's just backing him up. I even like the duality of the scene of a very small section where you've got Cooney just wildly following a Thompson about, being like, "Come on, we'll take you," and all that, because he's just cracked. And you've got Costa with his arm underneath the tank, having probably saved all of them by taking the tanks out. And it's just a thing of like this crazed lunatic running around, and you've got a man who's clearly just probably won a medal, writhing in agony. It's just an amazing sequence. And I think for me,
duality,
yeah. And I think for me, it's Aldrich's best film. I rate this over Dirty Dozen, over I forget the name of the other one, so I don't like it.
Too Late the Hero.
Too Late the Hero, yeah. I think this is his best.
It's definitely better than that, yeah.
His best war work, anyway. It might not be his best movie overall, but it's his best war work for me. And I also appreciate it because it's an early look at PTSD and war fatigue. And I still think it's incredible how the film just received no Academy recommendations, but probably because of its lack of help from the government. Maybe maybe they leaned on the Academy. Who knows? Not saying that happens, but you hear rumors sometimes. But before we go into your final thoughts, Matt, I found a quote from a 1974 book called The War Film by John Kagan. And he says, in the history of US war films, attack is a great watershed. The Cold War themes of the brutality of war, command levels, social responsibility, and the nature of the enemy in a shifting moral world are all transformed and transfigured. Attack is the first post-war film to connect with the new brutality of war with confusion, corruption, and incompetence of American leadership and American motives. In this sense, it is the first Cold War anti-war film. What do you think about that?
Very interesting. I don't know whether I would say it was the first one, but I suppose I can see how it could certainly fit into that
bracket.
Yeah.
I just thought it was very interesting because I didn't see it as a Cold War movie before he said that, but then I sort of understand it. I
agree. I can see that.
But I think in '74, you're writing just as the Vietnam War's in its death throes, and seeing how the American army has gone from this thing that you can be proud of to something maybe that you aren't as proud of. So I can see how you'd write that then. Maybe not now with the way things have gone, but it's
you could say the same thing of Men in War as well.
Yeah, very true. And that is a Cold War,
which is a Cold War movie, and that only came out the following year.
Yeah.
So they're very close together. Interesting. Yeah. The context of when these films are released and created is almost as interesting as the films themselves sometimes. For me, I think, as we've already said, it's a brilliant character piece with those three leads giving some really great performances, and the material is wonderful. It's let down somewhat by the set pieces and the limits that are constraining the filming of those set pieces, and the lack of someone giving some direction to would they have done that is showing in some places where the advance on Rommel and they've got that guy shouting 5, 4, 3, 2 and go, and you can hear them shouting that in the town.
It's a bit,
and that's a bit silly.
It's a bit like American Football League type playbooks type stuff for me.
It's a bit, and the sniper's terrible. He's stood in the frame of that window, and the guy that's supposed to be keeping an eye out for movement in the town, Ricks, completely misses him 3 times.
You can see how that would have worked on stage though as well. It's that bit there is great, and I like how Costa just punches him for it. You're not expecting it. This is the things in the 50s. I don't think people were expecting of their military. They weren't like this. It's
it's
putting
true.
it up for you to see. War is hell. I'm afraid. It's not nice. And I think sometimes these movies do glamorize it to some extent, but this one doesn't. Yeah.
It's a really interesting, and let me say that again. But I think at the very base of it, it's a really interesting character study that looks at corruption, cowardice, and the nature of combat, and how hatred can grow in someone as well.
Yeah, of course.
I think the way that Costa's hatred grows as he sees more of his men die because of Cooney's ineptitude is very powerful as well.
Yeah, because I can think it's the slow burn into insanity through it as well. Like at the start, I think he could forgive it, and I think he just see this.
He's resigned to it, isn't he?
He's resigned to it. He's like,
there's nothing we can do about it.
Can't do anything now. Yeah, and then by the time they get to the stone, he's like, no, that was a genuine.
No, I'm going to frag him.
I'm going to frag him. Yeah, and just the way he says the line, like, if you want to show, I said, if you want to see angry acting. Reserved angry acting, the bit where he pulls the grenade, go, "Oh, shove this down your throat and pull a pin." You don't need any swear words. You don't need any real grit. It's just a man telling you what you're going to do, what he's going to do to you, and it is chilling. I don't think Palance have been better personally for me. It's just not. It's just a very good, really well written film, a really good watch, and it rattles by as well. Like the pacing is fabulous as well.
It's really well directed. It's nicely shot. There's some interesting editing, and it does a great job with what it's got. And I think the main strength of the film is Aldrich's direction and Birok's cinematography.
Yeah,
really puts those performances center stage.
It feels Kubrickian to me in places as well.
Yeah, you did say that, didn't you, when you were watching it? Yeah,
like that cold open reminded me of like oh Christ, I forget the name of it now. The one with not Robert Redford, the other one, his dad. No, the 60s one. No, the 50s one. The French. I fucking forget the name.
Oh my God, Paths of Glory.
That's it. I just had it on the tip of my tongue. You get the start of like a war movie, and then it changes into something else. It really felt like that to me. I don't know why. I just got that sort of, and some of the shots as well are quite moody. They're quite
there's definitely some moody camera work going on.
Yeah, very like the crack in the wall, crack in the window.
Yeah, there's a couple of shots like that, isn't there?
Yeah, I like there's something about. I couldn't really work out what the cinematographer's trying to say, but there was something about the men stepping out of that comfy billet into a courtyard full of soldiers and tanks and jeeps. There was something about that. Like when they went out there, it was like there was something very symbolic about that. I'd love to have talked to the cinematographer about what he was trying to do through visuals. But yeah, if you haven't seen Attack, I mean, it's well worth seeking out. I mean, it's on DVD for a couple of quid on eBay. You can rent it on YouTube if you want to. That's what we did. Because I don't think any of the streaming services have it to watch as part of your subscription over here, because we had to rent it.
None that I'm on. No,
none that I'm on either. But yeah, please do seek Attack out, and thank you yet again to our fabulous patrons for picking it. We promise you by the end of the year or early next year, we will do a Chivalry and Swords movie. It will happen. We've blocked out our Christmas.
We did Hornblower, Rob. We've done one.
We've done one, yeah. Still have flintlocks in it.
There's gunpowder in that one as well, but there's a lot of chivalry and there's a lot of swords in it.
We were clinging on to gunpowder for dear life in that one. But we will do one very soon. And coming up for Christmas time, we've got some fabulous stuff coming up, which we won't tell you about just yet. We're not in December just yet, but all will become clear very, very soon. And do look out for our Christmas t-shirts when they drop, and we'll be doing a Christmas fundraiser like we did last year. And I'm sure we have a lot of goodies and things like that for you to look at and peruse for your Christmas enjoyment. So as always, thanks for listening, everybody. You can find the pod on all the social media, apart from OnlyFans, and you can find the entirety of the back catalogue of the film of the pod on fightingonfilm.com. And if you have a FOF binge starting from episode 1, do let us know.
Be the first, because no one's let us know yet.
No, they haven't let us know. Maybe they're doing it in secret.
Yeah, I think they are.
Yeah, they are. And if you watch the movies in order of the release of the show, I'd like to know as well, because someone was talking to me, one of our Facebook followers was talking to me about that this week, saying how that's like a curated list of war films to watch. I never thought it a bit like
that's
that. That's
a nice
before.
idea. I like that. I mean, I guess that's what we're doing, really.
Yeah, it is really, yeah. It really, really is. And anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again next week.
Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Bye.